Hi everyone, welcome back to Crime Talks. I am Valentina Ringo, and today we're talking about a case that haunted the Pacific Northwest for decades. A case that made parents afraid to let their daughters out at night. A case that just seemed so endless, body after body, year after year, until police finally caught one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. This is the story of Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, and how his murder spree became one of the darkest Halloween horrors in U.S. history. It all started in the summer of 1982. A pair of young boys were playing near the Green River just south of Seattle when they noticed something floating in the water. It was a body. Police recovered the victim and quickly discovered she wasn't the only one. Over the following weeks, more and more bodies were found in or near the Green River. Most of the victims were young women, many of them teenagers, and many were last seen alive in Seattle's SeaTac Strip, an area known at the time for sex work and runaways. The press quickly named the unknown killer the Green River Killer, and Seattle was terrified. One of the most tragic parts of this case is just how many victims there were. Gary Ridgway is confirmed to have killed at least 49 women, but he later claimed his actual number was closer to 71 or more, making him the most prolific confirmed serial killer in U.S. history. Most of his victims were young, vulnerable women. Many were runaways, sex workers, or struggling with addiction, and Ridgway admitted later that this was intentional. He told investigators he believed no one would care if these women disappeared. The pattern was chilling. Ridgway would pick up women in his truck, often near the SeaTac airport. He would drive them to remote wooded areas. He did strangle them, often with his bare hands, then leave their bodies near rivers or in forested dump sites. What made the case so frustrating for police was how careful Ridgway was. He didn't leave much evidence. He didn't fit the typical profile. He lived a quiet life in the suburb, worked as a truck painter, and was even married. And yet, all the while, he was killing, sometimes multiple women in a single week. By 1983, the Green River Killer had become such a source of fear that many parents in King County started keeping their kids home on Halloween. Police issued warnings for young women to avoid walking alone, even in daylight. For years, this case hung over the Seattle area like a storm cloud. Even though detectives had suspects, including Ridgway himself, they didn't have enough evidence to charge him. It wasn't until nearly 20 years later that science finally caught up with Ridgway. In the late 1900s, advancement in DNA technology allowed investigators to retest evidence collected back in the 1980s. And in 2001, they got a match. Gary Ridgway was arrested and charged with multiple murders. When police confronted him, he confessed, not just to the murders they could prove, but to a dozen more. He chillingly described how killing had become his career. Ridgway's confessions are some of the most disturbing ever recorded. He told detectives that after each murder, he would sometimes return to the body, sometimes for days or weeks, before moving on to his next victim. He said he killed so many women he eventually lost count. And when asked why he stopped, he said simply that he didn't stop. He just got slower. In 2003, Gary Ridgway was sentenced to life in prison without parole. after striking a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. As part of that deal, he agreed to help locate the remains of his victims, giving families some closures after decades of not knowing what happened. But for many families, there are still unanswered questions. Some victims have never been found. The Green River Killer has changed the way law enforcement approached serial killings. It led to the formation of specialized task force, improved communication between jurisdictions, and pushed forward the use of DNA technology in solving cold cases. But it also left a lasting scar. To this day, Halloween in Seattle area carries a shadow of those years. And when the idea of a killer on the loose wasn't just a scary story, but a reality. That's the story of Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, a man who hid in plain sight for decades, who targeted the most vulnerable, and who left a legacy of terror that still echoes today. Next week, we're taking a trip to a small Iowa town and back to 1912, and for the haunting story of the Vizcaya Axe murders. A case so eerie, you can still visit the house where it all happened. Of course, if you dare. Until then, stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, sometimes the real monsters aren't in costumes.